What's the experience like being in a franchise? What does that mean, and what kind of services do you get from your franchise?
Well, one of the things that people need to realize when they buy into a franchise is they still, at the end of the day, have to make payroll, pay rent. You still own the business. And a lot of the misconception out there is, well, the franchisor is supposed to help me with getting revenue in the door. And that's not really the case. What they are good at, a franchise, or is they have a proven successful model. And if you follow their model, you can be successful because they've already tested it out. They've gone through the pitfalls early on. So following their playbook, let's call it, gives you a better chance to be successful. Now, we all know that a number of businesses fail within the first couple of years. Biggest portion of that, the failure rate, is cash flow. So, when you're opening up a business, regardless if it's a franchise or if you're an independent, you've got to make sure you're getting revenue in the door right from the get-go. Quickly grow your revenue, but watch your expenses, especially your staffing costs, because that's typically a business's largest expense. And if you let your expenses run away, you're going to be in a world of hurt very quickly.
Right. So, would you recommend any franchise to someone, or do you think that some franchises are better than others? I mean, obviously, you like fully promoted, leverage that really well.
I think it really depends on the individual and what they're looking to do. I would recommend to everybody that if they're interested in joining a franchise, do your homework. There's plenty of information online where you can chat with different owners of different franchises and, get their take, whether it be, like a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, a McDonald's franchise. And, obviously I'm looking at the two, mentioning the two larger ones on the planet, which are very expensive to buy into these days. But there's plenty of other franchises out there, but it really depends on what you want to do. I mentioned earlier the criteria that my wife Jen and I put down, and one of the things is I didn't want to have to go to people's homes for our business. I wanted a location where people could come to us. Didn't really want to have to work weekends. So our model is really B2B. So that lends to, a Monday through Friday type of work environment. It's not to say we don't work on the weekends, because sometimes I'll be in here on a Saturday if we're busy and running the machines and doing some paperwork. But that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Right. So, when you started your franchise, what was one of the biggest hurdles you had to overcome? Maybe it was unexpected, maybe you knew. I mean, either way, like you got started and you're like, holy crap, this is a problem. What was that, and how did you overcome it?
I wouldn't say it was a problem, but knowing that going into it, you've got expenses right off the bat. You got rent due, you got your utilities, you've just hired, staff to be able to produce our products, and you don't have enough revenue just yet to soak up all those costs.
Right.
So one of the first things you realize is I need to get some revenue in this door to throw against those expenses and to start covering those expenses.
I think that's pretty much the classic. But I'll say this is what I have to say about that, right? Because there's any time in your business, you're going to have a shortfall of cash. At some point, it's going to happen. It's going to be a cash flow issue. It's going to be an unexpected expense, fall off in purchasing and orders. And for me, I will say, because it happens every now and then, I'll lose a big client, right? And I still have to make payroll. The one solution to all of that, and it doesn't mean that there isn't a way to go back and mitigate what happened and learn from the experience, but once you're there, once you need the money, there's only one solution. That's go out and make more money, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. It's the same thing. And for me, the struggle was, how do I win new clients? And this is, I started at like the early 2000s, right? So there really wasn't a lot of information on the internet the way there is now. There wasn't a lot of collaboration. And I think that for any business owner, right, you can have a plan laid out in front of you. You can have the money and you can know how you're going to afford things until your revenue comes in. But if you don't know how you're going to get your clients, I think that that's the thing that people leave out. Sometimes people think the clients are just going to show up, and that may be true. Like in the case of McDonald's, you put it out there, people are going to drive up, but that is rare. That is incredibly rare. You have to know how you're going to get your clients, and it's probably the most important thing, and it's the thing people focus on last. People are like, all right, I got my LLC, I got my insurance, I got my brick and mortar, I just hired some people. It's like put the cart before the horse. You have to know where those clients are coming from.
So one of the things we did early on is right before we opened our doors, we joined a number of different chamber of commerces, and we started attending networks events even before we opened our doors. And look at you think you want your niche to be, and then find associations associated with that niche.